hear reports from our 3 convention standing committees. To start us off, I'm pleased to introduce Lorraine Miller and James Roosevelt Jr., co-chairs of the Credentials Committee, to present their committee's report.
Hello, delegates to the 2020 Democratic National Convention. My name is Jim Roosevelt, and it is an honor to have served as a co-chair of the Credentials Committee, along with my good friend, Lorraine Miller. Pursuant to the convention rules, the Credentials Committee met and took action to approve the credentials of the delegates and alternates that have been credentialed for the 2020 Democratic National Convention. I am proud to say that all credentials issues were resolved in accordance with the actions of the Credentials Committee. This year's nominating process reflects the efforts of so many to make our process more open and more transparent. As a result, we know that our delegates reflect the best of our party, and we are all united around our nominees, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
May I add my thanks for the opportunity to serve as a co-chair of the Credentials Committee with my friend Jim Roosevelt. Our state and territorial parties have worked diligently in these unprecedented times to make sure that their delegations reflect the great diversity of our party. We are proud that our party places a priority on making sure that participants of this convention highlight a core value of our party. That is, ensuring that all Americans, regardless of sex, race, age, color, creed, national origin, religion, economic status, sexual orientation, gender identity, ethnic identity, or physical disability, have a role in this important process. Mr. Chair, I am pleased to report that the Credentials Committee report was approved by committee members and all delegates have been fully credentialed.
Thank you, Lorraine and Jim. We will now hear from the co-chairs of the Rules Committee, Maria Cardona and Congressman Barney Frank, to present that committee's report.
Buenas noches. My name is Maria Cardona, and I am so honored to serve as co-chair of the Rules and Bylaws Committee of the Democratic National Convention, along with my friend and colleague, Congressman Barney Frank. The Rules Committee met the last week of July to adopt the convention rules of procedure, officers, and agenda. The committee approved the rules that will govern the convention. These rules are based on a long-standing process that has governed our conventions for many, many cycles. Given the unprecedented nature of the COVID-19 health crisis, these rules that were approved focus on providing for a convention that will transform the convention experience for delegates and for participants and will allow for maximum participation by those delegates. The Rules Committee also ratified a dynamic group of Democrats to serve as the officers of the convention. The convention officers truly represent the ideals and the principles of the Democratic Party. These actions of the Rules Committee will ensure that the 2020 Democratic National Convention can efficiently and effectively proceed with its important business. The Rules Committee also took action on a resolution that was recommended for approval by convention delegates. The resolution calls on the Democratic National Committee to continue the work from this cycle to improve our nominating process and to build on those reforms for the 2024 cycle. The resolution calls on the DNC Rules Committee to conduct a comprehensive review of the presidential nominating reforms that were made and to evaluate where even further reforms might be needed. This review and accounting will be complete by March 31st, 2021. Chair, I am pleased to report that the unity resolution was approved by the delegates. Thank you to the delegates, thank you to the members of the Rules and Bylaws Committee, and thank you for continuing to do everything you can to ensure we are successful in November. Gracias.
Two things about the rules are very important to note. One, they continue and build on the trend towards making our nominating process as democratic as possible with a small d. We have asked that we go to primaries rather than caucuses. We have restricted and maintained those restrictions on non-elected delegates. Secondly, it's important to note that everything in these rules is the product of a very free agreement between the Sanders and Biden people, as it was last time between Clinton and Sanders. That is, we have a very democratic set of rules agreed upon enthusiastically by both camps.
Thank you, Maria and Barney. It's my pleasure to call on Platform Committee co-chairs Julie Chavez Rodriguez and Dennis Madonna to present their committee's report.
Good evening. I'm Julie Chavez Rodriguez, and alongside my friend Dennis McDonough, I was honored to co-chair this year's Democratic Platform Committee. This spring, the process for drafting our 2020 Democratic Platform began with the formation of the Unity Task Forces. Appointed by Vice President Biden and Senator Sanders, the task forces focused their work on 6 major policy priorities. Continuing the work of the task forces, the Platform Drafting Committee engaged voters and encouraged them to share their stories so that their values were reflected. The Platform Drafting Committee, chaired by Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, engaged so many throughout our party to ensure that that feedback was incorporated, whether it was received online or through allied groups.
Thanks, Julie. I'm Dennis McDonough, and I'm proud to have been Julie's co-chair on the Platform Committee. Our committee has produced a platform that proposes solutions to the challenges that American families face in this unprecedented time. It's informed by the values of our party and the priorities of our presidential nominee, Vice President Joe Biden. I strongly believe that this platform lays out an agenda informed by the values that will defeat Donald Trump and heal the soul of our nation, the United States of America.
Thank you, Julie and Dennis. Thank you to all the members of all 3 standing committees for your important work to ensure we have a smooth and orderly convention, a platform that represents our party's values and interests, and a plan for continuing to look at how we conduct our affairs in the best spirit of openness, fairness, and inclusion.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
My fellow Americans, this is my country. Many of us have fought hard for the right to say that. Many are now struggling today from the Harlem to Da Nang so that they may say this with conviction. This is our country.
We are a people in a quandary about the present. We are a people in search of our future.
We must make the American people hear our tale of two cities. We must convince them that we don't have to settle for two cities, that we can have one city, indivisible, shining for all of its people.
If you give us a chance, we can perform. After all, Ginger Rogers did everything that Fred Astaire did. She just did it backwards and in high heels.
There is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America. There is not a black America and a white America and Latino America and Asian America. There's the United States of America.
The American dream is not a sprint or even a marathon, but a relay. Our families don't always cross the finish line in the span of one generation.
This video I'm going to teach you.
But each generation passes on to the next the fruits of their labor.
We are one people.
Hey guys, I'm Vlad, and in this video I'm going to
the Stars and Stripes. All of us defending the United States of America.
Welcome to the second night of the Democratic National Convention.
This is a different kind of convention.
Look at the camera and smile.
And this
is a different kind of keynote.
is a different kind of keynote. This year,
all of us are on stage, and we've got a lot to say.
Let's get real. There's a lot riding on this election.
When we're facing the biggest economic and health crisis in generations, because our president didn't and still doesn't have a plan.
When doctors, nurses, and home health care aides in Philadelphia have to risk their own lives to protect others because there's not enough protective equipment.
When factory workers in Ohio are faced with dangerous conditions because this administration hasn't given clear guidance on how to protect our people.
When teachers in Gwinnett County, Georgia, and across the country are being asked to return to the classroom without a plan to keep them safe, and parents are exhausted juggling full-time work and full-time childcare.
And visiting our parents and grandparents through the window of a nursing home, worrying all the time that they'll get sick.
When unemployment in North Charleston, South Carolina, a city I represent, has risen nearly fourfold, and evictions are putting families out on the street in the middle of a pandemic.
Make no mistake, it didn't have to be this bad. In the early days of the virus, Donald Trump didn't listen to the experts. And then he said something that a president should never say.
He said, I don't take responsibility at all.
No responsibility.
No leadership.
No plan.
He still doesn't have a plan.
Donald Trump just doesn't understand. We can't fix our economy until we get a hold of the virus.
While working families are struggling, he's looking out for the people who are already doing just fine. The wealthy, the big corporations, the donors to his campaign.
He's looking out for himself.
But there's one person who's looking out for us.
All of us.
And that's Joe Biden.
Joe called it. We are in a battle for the soul of our nation.
But Joe knows we can never let hard times turn us against each other.
And we can never stop doing the hard work to make things right.
That's
why we ran for office.
Even when people counted us out.
Even when there had never been a Latina in the Nevada State Senate.
Or a Democrat elected as Florida Commissioner of Agriculture in nearly 3 decades.
Or an openly gay man in the Georgia State Legislature.
When Birmingham had a mayor this young in 120 years.
We ran for office because we know the struggles American families are facing, because we've lived them.
We've lived the insecurity and the indignity of an eviction notice.
I, like many of you, have lived the frustration of paying off student loans.
We have lived the grief of losing loved ones to gun violence and the criminal justice system that unfairly targets our communities.
We have lived that feeling of helplessness when someone you love is very sick and access to healthcare is a matter of life and death.
By the way, Joe Biden has lived a lot of this too.
He was raised in a middle-class family in Scranton, Pennsylvania and Claymont, Delaware.
He watched his dad look for work and learned that a job is about so much more than a paycheck.
It's about dignity and respect.
He was sworn into office from the hospital room of his 2 young sons after a car crash killed his wife and infant daughter.
He knows what it's like to thank God you have health care.
He knows what it's like to work hard for everything you've got.
He knows what it's like to send a child off to war.
And he'll never forget who he's fighting for.
I look around my district in North Texas, and I see the people who built this country. The educators, like the single mom who raised me. The men and women on the front lines of our healthcare system. You built this country.
Small business owners, like the ones whose shops and restaurants line the streets of Birmingham, Michigan.
Charleston, South Carolina.
Of tribal nations.
Line the streets of Philadelphia and bring our communities to life. You built this country.
The nurses in Memphis who came out of retirement to treat patients during this pandemic. You built this country.
And you know what? You deserve more than the constant chaos that Donald Trump delivers.
You deserve health care you can afford, a job that pays you fairly. You deserve child care and paid sick leave while you work. And when you pay into Social Security and Medicare,
guys, I'm Vlad,
you deserve to know it will be there when you retire.
And that's why we ran.
And thanks to the voters across the country in both red states and blue states,
we won. A new generation of leaders is rising up.
And with Joe Biden in the White House, there's no limit to what we can do.
In Nevada, we're making drug prices more transparent, so people with chronic illnesses won't go broke while drug companies get rich.
Joe's working to protect and expand the Affordable Care Act. He'll make sure millions of people keep their coverage and no one can be denied for a pre-existing condition. He'll bring down the cost of health care and prescription drugs too, giving tax credits to working families and allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices.
That's a big effing deal.
That's a big effing deal.
Because Joe knows we can't have a healthy economy if people can't afford health care.
But let's remember, Donald Trump is suing to take health care coverage away from more than 20 million Americans and eliminate protections for over 100 million with pre-existing conditions.
In the middle of a pandemic.
In Texas, we're standing up for fierce women like my mom and my tias who raised me to never back down from a tough fight. So we're fighting to make sure that mothers have access to health screenings for safe pregnancies and childbirth. And we're bringing long overdue justice to survivors of sexual assault.
Joe Biden has been fighting for women his entire career. As senator, he authored the Violence Against Women Act. And as president, he'll restore funding for Planned Parenthood. He will codify Roe v. Wade and make reducing maternal mortality, especially for women of color, a top priority.
In Florida, on the front lines of our climate crisis, we're working to produce more renewable energy and shrink our carbon footprint.
Joe has a major plan to invest in clean energy, jobs, and infrastructure.
In the House of Representatives, we're closing loopholes to ensure local infrastructure projects use American-made materials and local labor and support American manufacturing.
Unlike Donald Trump, Joe Biden will actually enforce Buy American rules, investing in American-made clean energy, building materials, high-tech equipment, and R&D, all creating more good jobs.
In Michigan, we're banning business practices that have exploited workers and cost them hundreds of millions of dollars in lost wages.
When unemployment is the highest rate since the Great Depression, when millions of people have seen their hours and pay slash, Joe knows it's not enough to rebuild the economy the way it was before. We've got to build it back better.
He'll build an economy that rewards work, not wealth, and get rid of the Trump tax cuts that only benefit big corporations and the rich. And then he'll invest in healthcare, education, and infrastructure, and in getting small businesses up and running again.
Take it from me, when you're in the trenches, you want Joe Biden right there next to you.
When I wanted to marry the man I loved, Joe Biden was the first national figure to support me and my family.
Appreciate you, man.
When the auto industry was going under, Joe stuck his neck out to protect it and helped save 1.5 million auto jobs.
When our economy was on the brink, Joe led the recovery effort that created millions of jobs. including here in Western Pennsylvania. Under his leadership, America bounced back with the longest economic expansion in history.
You know, the one Trump brags about creating?
That's what happens when Joe Biden is in your corner. Working families get a fair shot.
He understands that leadership means fighting for the people who built this country. All of you.
All of us.
This nation belongs to all of us. And in every election, we choose how we will create a more perfect union. Not by taking sides, but by taking stock of where we are and what we need. This year's choice could not be more clear. America faces a triple threat: a public health catastrophe, an economic collapse, and a reckoning with racial justice and inequality. So our choice is clear: a steady, experienced public servant who can lead us out of this crisis just like he's done before, or a man who only knows how to deny and distract, a leader who cares about our families, or a president who only cares about himself. We know Joe Biden. America, we need Joe Biden. To make your voice heard, text VOTE to 30330. In a democracy, we do not elect saviors. We cast our ballots for those who see our struggles and pledge to serve, who hear our dreams and work to make them real, who defend our way of life by protecting our right to vote.
In this module, you will be able
Faced
to
with a
automatically
president
generate
of cowardice, Joe Biden is a man of proven courage. He will restore our moral compass by confronting our challenges, not by hiding from them or undermining our elections to keep his job. In a time of voter suppression at home and authoritarians abroad, Joe Biden will be a champion for free and fair elections, for a public health system that keeps us safe, for an economy that we build back better than before, and for accountability and integrity in our system of justice. We stand with Joe Biden because this isn't just about defeating Donald Trump. We are in this to win for America. So let's get it done.
Hello, I'm Tracy Ellis Ross, and how exciting to hear from young elected leaders from across the country. A perfect way to begin night 2 of the Democratic National Convention, Uniting America. Tonight is all about leadership. This unprecedented moment calls for leadership, steady, inclusive leadership, driven by people who understand that our democracy is based on the value of each and every one of us being treated with dignity and respect. Leaders who respond to the needs of hardworking Americans who, right this minute, are unable to pay rent, put food on the table, and keep their loved ones safe. As a Black woman, I find myself at a crucial intersection in American politics. For far too long, Black female leadership in this country has been utilized without being acknowledged or valued. But we are turning the tide. Hello, Kamala. Her nomination is historic for anyone who believes in we the people. Like Senator Harris and many we saw in the keynote, today's leaders emerge from communities that have long been underrepresented. They're charting new paths in the spirit of Shirley Chisholm, Charlotta Bass, Fannie Lou Hamer, and John Lewis. They get in good trouble, necessary trouble. They call things out otherwise ignored, elevating our nation and changing the course of our lives for the better. With every vote we cast for forward-thinking, honest leaders, we chip away at ingrained systems of inequity, and we bend the arc of justice. True leaders make sure that policy is informed by all of us, bridging our burdened past to a safe, equitable, and even joyful future. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are that bridge, heeding voices from within the movement for racial justice, listening to the people, and acting with empathy and compassion to reflect our shared humanity. Tonight, we'll hear from a number of American leaders, including former acting U.S. Attorney General Sally Yates, who refused to defend an unconstitutional travel ban and paid for it with her job.
The threat to this nation, to our democracy, is real. It's clear and it's present. You've watched the president now for 3 years. Look at what he's doing. Instilling fear. I mean, not joking, instilling fear. Sowing division, stoking racial division. Undercutting every institution that was designed to check the abuse of power by the president or anyone else. All this for what reason? All this in order to solidify his base and expand his power.
Good evening. I'm Sally Yates. Speaking at a political convention is something I never expected to be doing. But the future of our democracy is at stake. I'm here in my hometown of Atlanta, where as a young lawyer, I joined our nation's Justice Department. For nearly 30 years, through Democratic and Republican administrations, I worked alongside my DOJ colleagues to advance our nation's promise of equal justice. I served as Deputy Attorney General in the Obama-Biden administration and stayed on as Acting Attorney General for the Trump transition. Then, 10 days in, I was fired for refusing to defend President Trump's shameful and unlawful Muslim travel ban. That was the start of his relentless attacks on our democratic institutions and countless dedicated public servants. Like me, these officials didn't swear an oath to a person or a party. Public servants promised to defend our Constitution, uphold our laws, and work on behalf of the American people. But from the moment President Trump took office, he's used his position to benefit himself rather than our country. He's trampled the rule of law, trying to weaponize our Justice Department to attack his enemies and protect his friends. Rather than standing up to Vladimir Putin, he fawns over a dictator who is still trying to interfere in our elections. He's even trying to sabotage our postal service to keep people from being able to vote. His constant attacks on the FBI, the Free Press, inspectors general, federal judges, they all have one purpose: to remove any check on his abuse of power. Put simply, he treats our country like it's his family business, this time bankrupting our nation's moral authority at home and abroad. But our country doesn't belong to him. It belongs to all of us. Joe Biden embraces that. He has spent his entire life putting our country first. He has never backed down from a challenge or a bully. He summons the best in us and lives by the values that define us as Americans: service, integrity, courage, compassion. There are countless stories of Joe Biden reaching out to someone in their moment of need. Well, this is our country's moment of need. We need a president who respects our laws and the privilege of public service, who reflects our values and cares about our people. We need a president who will restore the soul of America. We need Joe Biden.
Over the last 4 years, we have experienced failed leadership under Donald J. Trump.
We've had to deal with this insanity.
I've watched our country deteriorate.
The cover-ups, the lying, the favoritism.
The disregard for the Constitution.
Donald Trump has failed America.
It is time for us to reclaim our constitutional and democratic values.
We need to prove to the world, and most importantly, prove to ourselves that we are better than this.
We need an experienced leader.
A leader that has passion, integrity, and strategic leadership skills.
And his name is Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden is that leader.
And he really wants the best for this country.
He understands and respects our democracy, the rule of law, and the U.S. Constitution.
He will move toward creating a more perfect union.
Hi, this is Senator Chuck Schumer, Democratic leader from my hometown, Brooklyn, New York. Behind me is a sight I see out of my window every night, the Statue of Liberty, the same sight that greeted hopeful immigrants like my grandparents, a symbol of freedom and a beacon of hope to the world. Today, Donald Trump has divided our country, diminished our greatness, and demeaned everything that this statue represents. He even hid in a bunker as Americans were tear-gassed and beaten. Millions are jobless. 170,000 Americans have died from COVID. And Donald Trump says it is what it is. Presidents should never say it is what it is. President Lincoln, honoring the great sacrifice at Gettysburg, didn't say it is what it is. President Roosevelt, seeing a third of the nation ill-housed, ill-clad, and ill-nourished, didn't say it is what it is. America, Donald Trump has quit on you. We need a president with dignity, integrity, and the experience to lead us out of this crisis. A man with a steady hand and a big heart who will never, ever quit on America. That man is my friend, Joe Biden. He will be a great president. But if we're going to win this battle for the soul of our nation, Joe can't do it alone. Democrats must take back the Senate. We will stay united, from Sanders and Warren to Manchin and Warner. And with our unity, we will bring bold and dramatic change to our country. Let me tell you some of the things we do. With President Biden, Vice President Harris, and a Democratic majority, we will make health care affordable for all. We'll undo the vicious inequality of income and wealth that has plagued America for far too long, and we'll take strong, decisive action to combat climate change and save the planet. We will protect voting rights, fight systemic racism in the criminal justice system and in our economy, and restore a Supreme Court that looks out for people, not corporations. We'll rebuild our infrastructure and make sure every home, from inner city to rural America, has broadband. We will save the post office and once and for all defeat COVID-19, this evil disease. And, beckoned by the lady behind us, we will reform our immigration system so that immigrants yearning to breathe free will at last become American citizens. Together, we can reignite the hope once felt by millions of men and women, huddled masses on creaking ships, who glimpsed this mighty woman with her torch, knowing they could build a better life here in America. And out of this long national nightmare, America will finally awaken to a brighter future and a new day.
Senator Chuck Schumer reminding us that leadership requires integrity and accountability. Real leaders don't ask what we can do for them, they ask what they can do for us. In a minute, we will hear from two former presidents, and they're going to speak to that. But first, here are Caroline Kennedy and her son, Jack Schlossberg.
60 years ago, in a crowded LA stadium, my father accepted the Democratic nomination for president. He challenged Americans to look to the future and join him on a journey toward a new frontier.
It was a call to the young at heart, regardless of age or party. Times have changed, but the themes of my grandfather's speech, courage, unity, and patriotism, are as important today as they were in 1960. And once again, we need a leader who believes America's best days are yet to come. We need Joe Biden.
I've admired Joe Biden since I was a Senate intern in 1974. He shared my Uncle Teddy's commitment to civil rights, women's rights, and working families. He was a senator who cared, who led, who inspired. That's why I helped choose him to be Barack Obama's running mate in 2008. When I was U.S. Ambassador to Japan, I got to see Vice President Biden in action. He stepped off Air Force Two wearing his aviator glasses and a big smile, radiating American optimism and generosity. I saw a leader who was tough but fair, who commanded the trust and respect of other nations, and who always put America's interests first. Joe Biden's lifetime of public service reflects his unwavering commitment to our highest ideals.
In this election, our future is on the ballot. For my generation, it will define the rest of our lives. We need to tackle climate change. We need to end systemic racial injustice. We need to make healthcare available for everybody, and we need to rebuild an economy that helps working families. We can do this. We can reach these new frontiers, but only with a president who asks what he can do for our country and what together we can do to build a better world. It's up to us. Let's get it done. Let's elect Joe Biden, the next President of the United States.
It's a great pleasure for Jimmy and me to join you in celebrating our next President of the United States, Joe Biden. We've known and admired Joe and Jill for many years, and most recently, I've worked with them on tackling the demands faced by the more than 53 million unpaid caregivers in our country who are juggling work and other family responsibilities and putting their own physical and mental health and well-being at risk. Joe knows well, too well, the sorrows and struggles of being a family caregiver. From Joe's time as a young widower, thrust into single parenthood with a demanding job, to he and Jill caring for their own parents and their son Bo at the end of their lives. He knows caregiving is hard, even on the good days. Jill and I also know the challenges of caregiving for those who served in the military and returned with visible and invisible wounds, and we know those caregivers need a leader in the White House. Jimmy and I are voting for Joe because he recognizes the challenges facing our families and has the heart and the talent to make life better for all Americans.
When I ran for president in 1976, Joe Biden was my first and most effective supporter in the Senate. For decades, he has been my loyal and dedicated friend. Joe has the experience, character, and decency to bring us together and restore America's greatness. We deserve a person with integrity and judgment, someone who is honest and fair, someone who is committed to what is best for the American people. Joe is that kind of leader, and he is the right person for this moment in our nation's history. He understands that honesty and dignity are essential traits that determine not only our vision, but our actions. More than ever, that's what we need. In these uncertain times, Joe Biden realizes that many American lives can be saved each day through the use of masks and testing, as recommended by our medical experts. Joe Biden must be our next president.
Good evening. A presidential election is the world's most important job interview. At the end, we hire a leader to help us solve problems, create opportunities, and give our kids better tomorrows. That's a tall order this year, with the COVID-19 outbreak on a path to killing 200,000 people and destroying millions of jobs and small businesses. How did Donald Trump respond? At first, he said the virus was under control and would soon disappear. When it didn't, he was on TV every day bragging on what a great job he was doing, while our scientists waited to give us vital information. When he didn't like the expert advice he was given, he ignored it. Only when COVID exploded in even more states did he encourage people to wear masks. By then, many more were dying. When asked about the surge in deaths, he shrugged and said, "It is what it is." But did it have to be this way? No. COVID hit us much harder than it had to. We have just 4% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's COVID cases. Our unemployment rate is more than twice as high as South Korea's, 2.5 times the United Kingdom's, more than 3 times Japan's. Donald Trump says we're leading the world. Well, we are the only major industrial economy to have its unemployment rate tripled. At a time like this, the Oval Office should be a command center, Instead, it's a storm center. There's only chaos. Just one thing never changes: his determination to deny responsibility and shift the blame. The buck never stops there. Now you have to decide whether to renew his contract or hire someone else. If you want a president who defines the job as spending hours a day watching TV and zapping people on social media, he's your man. Denying, distracting, and demeaning works great if you're trying to entertain or inflame. But in a real crisis, it collapses like a house of cards. COVID just doesn't respond to any of that. To beat it, you've got to actually go to work and deal with the facts. Our party is united in offering you a very different choice: a go-to-work president, a down-to-earth, get-the-job-done guy, a man with a mission to take responsibility, not shift the blame, concentrate, not distract, unite, not divide. Our choice is Joe Biden. Joe helped bring us back from a recession before, and he can do it again. In 2009, Barack Obama and Joe Biden started with the worst economy since the Great Depression. And when they were done, they delivered more than 6 straight years of job growth. What did Joe do? He accepted responsibility for implementing the Recovery Act. His work created a lot of new jobs and started many new companies in communities across our country. Now Joe's committed to building America back again. How? He's given us smart, detailed plans to invest in areas vital to our future: innovative financing for modern factories and small businesses, good jobs in green energy and conservation to combat climate change, a modern infrastructure that brings small town and rural America the connectivity and investment others take for granted, and a plan to ensure that Black Americans, Latino Americans, Native Americans, women, immigrants, and other communities left behind are full participants in our economy and our society. Joe Biden wants to build an economy far better suited to our changing world. Better for young people, better for families working and raising their kids, better for people who lost jobs and need new ones, better for farmers tired of being collateral damage in trade wars, better for workers caring for the sick, elderly, and people with disabilities, better because of a living wage and access to affordable higher education and health care, including prescription drugs, and to child care, a secure retirement, and for the first time, paid family and medical leave. Joe won't just put his signature on a check and try to fool you into thinking it came from him. He'll work to make sure that your paycheck reflects your contribution to and your stake in a growing economy. In this job interview, the difference is stark. You know what Donald Trump will do with 4 more years: blame, bully, and belittle. And you know what Joe Biden will do: build back better. It's Trump's us versus them America against Joe Biden's America, where we all live and work together. It's a clear choice. The future of our country is riding on it. Thank you.
It's time to call the roll and officially nominate the Democratic candidate for President of the United States. But this year, for the first time, the roll call is heading out to all 57 states and territories, places that showcase our nation's natural beauty, places where people are working together to secure a better future for our country, and places that are working to rebuild and recover, like Iowa, where thousands have been left homeless and hundreds of thousands have been left without power in the wake of last week's terrible storm. Our hearts are with you, Iowa. There's so much going on right now. Tonight, we come together to nominate a candidate who will fight for all of us. The convention delegates will do the official nominating, but you can join them in supporting Joe Biden. Text JOIN to 30330 to get involved. And now, the chair of the Democratic National Committee, Tom Perez.
It's great to be here in Milwaukee, a proud union town whose grit and character reflect the resilience of our party and our country. There's no doubt these last few months have been tough, but good leadership means being able to adapt to any situation. And I want to thank the people of Milwaukee for being such gracious and flexible hosts. It's also great to be back in Wisconsin, where I was lucky enough to marry my wife, Anne Marie, a little more than 3 decades ago. The progressive movement has deep roots here. And since today is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment's ratification, we should point out that Wisconsin was the first state to ratify it. What's more, in its one-word motto, forward, Wisconsin captures something so important about America. The way that no matter what challenges today brings, we always believe a better future is possible. That's what my parents believed when they emigrated to this country nearly a century ago, fleeing the iron fist of a brutal dictator in the Dominican Republic. This nation welcomed them with compassion, and they quickly learned that their hope of building a better life through hard work was shared by generations of Americans. Indeed, every American story is a story about that hope, that sense of possibility. It's what unites us, defines us, and it's what sustains us now. We will work to meet our extraordinary challenges because progress is made by the hopeful, not the cynical. And we will do that work together because movements are built by the many, not the few. And as you watch tonight's decidedly unconventional roll call and reflect on the diversity of our nation, remember, you too are part of the American story. And no matter where you come from or where you're watching from tonight, you have a place in Joe Biden's Democratic Party.
Delegates and distinguished guests, under our procedural rules, 2 Democratic candidates submitted nominating documents to our convention secretary for the office of President of the United States, Senator Bernie Sanders and Vice President Joe Biden. As such, each candidate has provided names of individuals who will make nominating and seconding speeches on their behalf. We will begin with nominating and seconding speeches for Senator Sanders. Speaking on his behalf will be 2 progressive champions, Bob King and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
I'm Bob King. As a proud union member and former president of a great American union, the UAW, I am honored to nominate Bernie Sanders for president. For decades, Bernie has led the fight for working families, fighting for workers' rights to organize unions and collectively bargain. In a time of enormous inequality, he understands that we must confront large corporations which have far too much control over our economy and our politics. Bernie believes health care is a human right and should not be contingent on a job. He knows we can rebuild our crumbling infrastructure by creating millions of good-paying union jobs while combating climate change. Bernie's moral clarity has emboldened the Democratic Party's fight for justice. The grassroots energy of his supporters has cemented important advances in our platform. Bernie will continue to lead a movement that helps defeat Trump and delivers transformational change. I'm excited to place into nomination the name of a great champion of the working class, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Good evening, bienvenidos, and thank you to everyone here today endeavoring towards a better, more just future for our country and our world. In fidelity and gratitude to a mass people's movement working to establish 21st century social, economic, and human rights, including guaranteed health care, higher education, living wages, and labor rights for all people in the United States. A movement striving to recognize and repair the wounds of racial injustice, colonization, misogyny, and homophobia, and to propose and build reimagined systems of immigration and foreign policy that turn away from the violence and xenophobia of our past. A movement that realizes the unsustainable brutality of an economy that rewards explosive inequalities of wealth for the few at the expense of long-term stability for the many, and who organized a historic grassroots campaign to reclaim our democracy. In a time when millions of people in the United States are looking for deep, systemic solutions to our crises of mass evictions, unemployment, and lack of health care, in el espíritu del pueblo and out of a love for all people, I hereby second the nomination of Senator Bernard Sanders of Vermont for President of the United States of America.
Thank you, Mr. King and Representative Ocasio-Cortez. We now turn to nominating and seconding speeches for Vice President Biden. In a moment, we'll hear from Senator Chris Coons, who holds the Delaware Senate seat once held by the Vice President, and Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester, my colleague in the House. But first, we'll hear from Jacqueline Asby, a working American who met Joe Biden in a most unexpected place, the elevator where she worked.
I take powerful people up on my elevator all the time. When they get off, they go to their important meetings. Me, I just head back to the lobby. But in the short time I spent with Joe Biden, I could tell he really saw me, that he actually cared, that my life meant something to him. And I knew, even when he went into his important meeting, he'd take my story in there with him. That's because Joe Biden has room in his heart for more than just himself. We've been through a lot, and we have tough days ahead. But nominating someone like that to be in the White House is a good place to start. That's why I nominate my friend, Joe Biden, as the next president of the United States.
I'm Senator Chris Coons from Delaware, a small state where people expect to see their senators and even sometimes their vice president at the supermarket, at a church festival, out in their community. Joe fights for us because he knows our struggles and hopes. He knows the pain of loss and the worries of working parents. And he's always brought that same personal concern he showed for Jacqueline to getting things done as our senator and then as President Obama's vice president. Joe's tackled gun violence and climate change. He stood up to dictators and supported our troops. He led the recovery effort after the last recession and delivered on a promise to make our healthcare system fairer and stronger. Through it all, Joe Biden's never forgotten where he's from. He's been sustained by his faith and his family through the toughest of times, and he has the heart and the compassion for this moment. For all of these reasons and more, it's my honor to second the nomination of my good friend, Joe Biden, to be the next president of these United States.
I'm Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester. In some history class in the future, children are learning about this moment. They're learning about our pain, our grief, our worry. But they're also learning about a man named Joe Biden, about how he restored decency to our government and integrity to our democracy. They're learning about how we conquered a pandemic, stood united for racial justice, and built our economy back better than before. They're learning about how his leadership gave their generation a fighting chance.
That proposes solution.
They're learning about us, too. About the resolve and the unity we showed against the forces of hatred and division. About the work we will do over the next 11 years.
It's important to note that
and
everything
about
in
the
these
night
rules
when, despite our distance,
we
came together to nominate Joe Biden for President of the United States, a nomination I'm honored to second.
Thank you all. Pursuant to our convention rules, we'll now proceed to a roll call by states on the selection of our party's candidate for the President of the United States. Secretary Wray.
Mr. Chairman, coming to you live from the Wisconsin Center, it's time to begin our virtual trip around America. Our journey begins at the site of a major step forward in our national journey towards justice. Let's go to Alabama.
John Lewis marched across this bridge in 1965 to demand the right to vote. A lifetime later, civil rights and voting rights remain America's great unfinished business. But those who walked this path before us showed us the way forward. If we want to honor John Lewis's incredible life, let's restore the Voting Rights Act and ensure that our democracy belongs to all Americans. Alabama casts 8 votes for Bernie Sanders, and the great state of Alabama casts 52 votes for our next president of these United States, Joe Biden.
Alaska.
The waters we rely on to feed our families and make a living are threatened by climate change. When Joe Biden was vice president, he and President Obama made sure Alaska's tribes had a say on how these waters were managed. Donald Trump took it away. We must elect a president who will respect our voices, protect our waters, and address climate change. Alaska cast 7 votes for Bernie Sanders and 12 votes for the next president, Joe Biden.
American Samoa.
Joe Biden honors our service, and we trust him to support our community. As vice president, he helped expand rural infrastructure to communities like ours, broadening our economic capacity. As president, he will continue to strengthen rural America from New England to the Pacific.
On behalf of the Governor Lolo Matalasi Molinga and the American Samoa Democratic Party, we proudly cast 11 votes for our next president of the United States of America, Joe Biden.
Arizona.
As a middle school teacher, I know that public educators are doing everything they can to make sure our students have quality learning experiences this fall. As a mother of a high school freshman, I know that it's far from perfect. As an NEA union organizer, I'll fight to make sure that it's scientists, parents, and educators that decide when it's safe to go back to school, not politicians. As an Arizona Latina, I proudly cast our votes, 29 for Bernie Sanders and 51 for our next president, Joe Biden.
Arkansas.
Feeding people is an act of love, and I think we all can use a little extra love these days. So we took our food trucks out into the community to deliver meals made right here at the Clinton Presidential Center for our neighbors in need. Even when our leaders let us down, America kept looking out for each other. Arkansas cast 9 votes for Bernie Sanders and 27 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
California.
Climate change is not a hoax. It's real, and communities of color have been bearing the brunt of this reality for generations.
Joe Biden's plan to crack down on polluters to protect our air and water is about environmental justice and economic justice.
He'll prioritize equity and bring new clean energy jobs to Black and brown neighborhoods because that is how we build back better.
California, home to our next vice president, Kamala Harris, cast 231 votes for Bernie Sanders
and 263 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Colorado.
Han and I grew up in poverty as immigrants, but we've been able to make a decent living. We're extremely lucky. But now we have 3 family members that tested positive for COVID, and it just doesn't feel safe to put Evan and Emma back to school. This is certainly going to be hard on them and on us, but millions of working families will have it much harder. I know Joe Biden cares about these struggles, and that's why I trust him to fight for us. With 1 abstention, Colorado will cast 36 votes for Bernie Sanders and 42 for our next president, Joe Biden.
Connecticut.
Firefighters are proud to put our lives on the line every day to protect our neighbors. It's a badge of courage. But while we are protecting your family, we need a president who is committed to protecting ours, and that's Joe Biden. He has the courage we respect and the commitment to working Americans we need now. On behalf of our governor, Ned Lamont, I am honored to cast Connecticut's 75 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Delaware.
Delaware passes.
Delaware passes. Democrats abroad.
We represent the millions of Americans who live outside the United States and vote back home. Americans abroad can make a difference in the states that will decide this year's elections. We need your help to elect a president who will restore our standing around the world. Go to votefromabroad.org to learn more. Democrats Abroad is proud to cast 10 votes for Bernie Sanders and 7 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
District of Columbia.
Welcome to my hometown and the best city in the world. Washington, D.C. is 706,000 residents strong. We raise families, pay taxes, and serve the United States military, just like every American in the 50 states. The House of Representatives just passed an historic piece of legislation to make Washington, D.C. the 51st state. From Black Lives Matter Plaza, the District of Columbia proudly cast 1 vote for Bernie Sanders and 43 votes for the next president of the United States, Joe Biden.
Florida.
When my daughter was murdered in Parkland, Joe Biden called to share in our family's grief. I quickly learned about his decency and his civility, but I also learned about his toughness and how he's beaten the NRA. Together with the other victims of gun violence and our nation's youth, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will take on the NRA again and win. Let's win back our freedom to live without fear. Florida cast 57 votes for Bernie Sanders and 192 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Georgia.
My mentor, Congressman John Lewis, knew that the right to vote is sacred. Georgians know that our ability to vote is under attack. Long lines, voter suppression. Donald Trump is even trying to slow down the mail and force us to risk our lives to cast a ballot. We will not be silenced. Take out your phone and text VOTE to 30330 and make sure your voice is heard in this election. From the cradle of the civil rights movement and in the spirit of good trouble, Georgia cast our 117 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Guam.
70 years ago this summer, Chamorros became U.S. citizens. We are proud of our resilience, proud of our indigenous heritage, and proud to be part of this historic moment for our party and our nation. From the land where America's day begins, Guam cast 2 votes for Bernie Sanders and 11 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Hawaii.
I came from the Philippines to Hawaii, the land of indigenous Native Hawaiians. Today, I want to speak to my fellow immigrants, to the essential workers on the front line, to the service members who wear our flag, to the parents with big dreams for their children. No matter where we came from, immigrants belong in our country's long fight for justice. We belong in the America we are building together. Hawaii, birthplace of President Obama, cast 9 votes for Bernie Sanders and 23 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Idaho.
We're not waiting for Washington to act on climate change. Here in Boise, we know that clean energy doesn't just mean a healthier planet, it means good, paying jobs. Imagine what we could do with a president that listens to science and leads with courage. Idaho casts 9 votes for Bernie Sanders and 16 for our next president, Joe Biden.
Illinois.
Discrimination has denied too many Black Americans the chance to own a home and build wealth. Joe Biden has a plan to end racist lending practices and help more people of color achieve the American dream of owning a home. This isn't just about racial justice. It's about stronger communities and more economic security for working families. Illinois cast 59 votes for Bernie Sanders and 122 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Indiana.
Here in South Bend, we once feared that our best days were behind us. But then we reimagined our economy with new jobs and even new industries. The Hoosier State is ready to lead America's recovery with our diverse communities, our talented workers, and our best-in-the-world agriculture. Joe Biden's plan gives us a blueprint to revitalize industrial cities and rural areas alike. Indiana casts 2 votes for my friend Bernie Sanders and 86 votes for the next president, Joe Biden.
Iowa.
We were going to talk to you tonight about biofuels, but the powerful storm that swept through Iowa last week has taken a terrible toll on our farmers, our small businesses, and our families who are still without power.
So while we have the honor of casting Iowa's votes, 11 for Bernie Sanders and 38 for Joe Biden, we also want to ask you to keep Iowans in your thoughts during this difficult time.
Kansas.
I'm a 4th-generation family farmer, but I worry about the next generation. Many of our young folks end up moving from rural communities to find jobs. Joe Biden has a plan to help new farmers get a good start. And by funding schools and health care, he'll make sure that rural communities remain great places to live, work, and raise a family for generations to come. Kansas, the Sunflower State, proudly cast 10 votes for Bernie Sanders and 35 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Kentucky.
One day when I was 14, my mom wouldn't wake up. Calling 911, I was scared not only because she was sick, but because I knew we couldn't afford the bill. Thank God she survived. When I told Joe Biden that story in 2008, he promised to continue to fight for folks like us and got busy passing Obamacare. 2 years ago, when Mom had a heart attack, we only had to worry about her getting better because Joe kept his promise. The Commonwealth of Kentucky cast all 60 votes for the next president of the United States, Joe Biden.
Louisiana.
This used to be an abandoned building. Now it's a thriving art studio, a community hub, a place where independent artists can make their name and parents can bring their kids during these difficult days of remote learning.
Our cities are strong because our people make them strong. And our economy will come back because our small businesses will bring it back.
Louisiana cast all 60 of our votes for my friend and the next president, Joe Biden.
Maine.
My American dream, I'm living it. A 25-acre organic farm on the lake, a roadside farm stand, and a bed and breakfast. My husband and I aren't corporate tycoons. We just want to make an honest living and feed our community. Small businesses like ours are the backbone of rural economies across America. Joe Biden has a plan to help more Americans, especially people of color, start their own businesses. Maine casts 9 votes for Bernie Sanders and 22 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Maryland.
Black lives matter. And when it comes to racial justice, black opportunity matters.
When Joe Biden rebuilds our middle class, he won't leave anyone behind. His plan, more capital for Black entrepreneurs.
More funding for public schools and HBCUs.
Banning racial discrimination in the housing market.
And paying every worker a fair wage.
That's building back better.
Maryland.
The home of Frederick Douglass.
Cast 1 vote for Bernie Sanders and 119 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Massachusetts.
We need a plan to get the economy going again. Joe Biden will get the pandemic under control, create new jobs in manufacturing and clean energy, help small businesses and our restaurants recover, and build back better so that our economy is stronger and fairer than it was before. Massachusetts cast 30 votes for Bernie Sanders and 83 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Michigan auto workers are the best in the world, but we'd be nowhere without Joe Biden. And a lot of folks wanted to let Detroit go bankrupt. But Joe Biden believed in us, and together we fought to save our auto industry.
Now he's got a plan to create 1 million new auto jobs by investing in clean energy. Joe Biden believes in American workers. He's got our back, and we've got his.
Michigan cast 53 votes for Bernie Sanders and 92 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Minnesota.
I'm here in Minnesota, the home of the headwaters of the Mississippi River. We know that a bridge shouldn't fall down in the middle of America, but it did. And we came together to rebuild it. That's what we do in America. That's what Joe Biden will do as president. He'll build back better. He'll cross the river of our divides and unite this country from our cities to our suburbs to our rural areas. And now we will virtually cross the great Mississippi to St. Paul to hear from my friend, Mayor Melvin Carter.
Thank you, Senator. As the 46th mayor of a city that's more than ready for our 46th president, I'm proud to cast Minnesota's 31 votes for Bernie Sanders and 60 votes for our next U.S. president, Joe Biden.
Mississippi.
Tougaloo College reflects the progression of a people from slavery to citizenship to scholarship and leadership, contributing to Mississippi and the world. Our alumni are leaders like Convention Chairman Congressman Benny Thompson. Joe Biden wants to invest $70 billion in HBCUs like Tougaloo. Imagine what impact that could have on HBCUs. Imagine what impact HBCUs could have on America. Mississippi cast 2 votes for Bernie Sanders and 38 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Missouri.
As a member of the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers, Local 1 St. Louis, I love walking around the city and seeing the contributions that my brothers and sisters have made. We stand ready to rebuild our nation's infrastructure, and with Joe Biden's leadership, we'll create millions of new jobs, building back better. Missouri cast 28 votes for Bernie Sanders and 50 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Montana.
When COVID shut down my college, I came home to my parents' ranch to finish senior year online. But some days, I can't even get a video to load or an email attachment to send. Without reliable internet, there's no remote learning, no virtual doctor's appointments, and just try starting a small business. Rural broadband can be a game changer for rural communities like mine, and Joe Biden has a plan to make it happen. Montana cast 1 vote for Bernie Sanders and 18 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Nebraska.
I work at a meatpacking plant, making sure grocery store shelves stay full. They call us essential workers, but we get treated like we're expendable. Workers are dying from COVID, but a lot of us don't have paid sick leave or even quality protective equipment. We are human beings, not robots, not disposable. We want to keep helping you feed your family, but we need a president who will have our backs. Nebraska cast 33 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Nevada.
Working people are the backbone of our economy and the key to our recovery. Joe Biden knows it's not enough to praise them. We have to reward them. So let's raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, empower workers to negotiate for better benefits and safer workplaces, and make it easier to pay for things like health care and higher education. I am proud to cast 24 votes for Bernie Sanders and 25 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
New Hampshire.
Hello from the Granite State. We trust Joe Biden. Joe will provide the leadership necessary to bring us back from this awful pandemic. Joe has a plan to attack global climate change once and for all. And Joe will restore honesty, decency, and trust to the White House, reunite all Americans, and build a better future for all. The great state of New Hampshire awards 9 delegates to our friend and neighbor, Bernie Sanders, and 24 delegates to the next president of the United States, Joe Biden.
New Jersey.
We've been hit hard by COVID, but we're coming back. But we have to be smart. We have to listen to the experts, and we have to have a president who has a plan. That's why, in memory of all those we've lost, in solidarity with those who are sick or struggling, and in eternal gratitude for our heroic frontline workers, New Jersey cast 5 votes for Senator Bernie Sanders and 139 votes for the next president of the United States, Joe Biden.
New Mexico.
Makoam, Hinomamkima Kirimba. Greetings and good evening. My name is Derek Lente, State Representative, coming to you from the homeland of my